Before getting married. I accidentally flipped through the photo album on Damian's old phone. I saw many photos of him holding kittens in it. But he clearly told me that he was allergic to cats and couldn't keep one. Because of this, I reluctantly sent away the only kitten my father left me. I went home to find him and heard a bold female voice outside the door. Song Jiu, you can't abandon your daughters even after getting married. Your little girls are waiting for you every day. Damian replied to her in a pleading tone, how dare I? For those two little fellows. I even lied to Serena that I'm allergic to cats. I was about to push the door open. But then I froze outside. You're sensible. You already have 21 and unwanted. And you can't have other little kittens outside. I recognized the voice of this woman. It was his childhood friend, Violet. Damian's tone was full of doting. If I hadn't been thinking about 21 and unwanted, I wouldn't have pretended to be allergic to cats and made Serena send the cat away. Their other friends were also teasing. You have a high status in the family. When you told her to send the cat away, she did it right away. Damian sneered. And his tone was a bit more contemptuous. You don't know how worried Serena was about me. She almost cried when she saw me gasping for breath due to the allergy. I almost burst out laughing while acting. I stood outside the door, feeling as if I had been poured a bucket of cold water from head to toe, and my lips were trembling. Brother Song is really amazing. With just a little effort, he has completely won over the unattainable beauty from back then. Violet also giggled and said, Song Jiu. Serena still doesn't know that you arranged for that thing to happen back then. Right? My heart skipped a beat. As if it had been severely pierced by a sharp object. A pang of intense pain spread through my heart. I instinctively refused to listen to what they were going to say next. That matter was a taboo for me. I hadn't mentioned it for 5 years. But Damian's deep and lazy voice clearly reached my ears. She still doesn't know. But so what if she does? In the end, it was still me who stepped in to save her. If it weren't for me, she would have been sold to pay off the debt long ago. His reply was casual, as if he was talking about someone irrelevant. I clenched my fists tightly. My eyes felt sore, and my throat felt dry. I never dreamed that the shadow that had haunted me throughout my 4 years in college was actually created by my fiancé. The huge shock made me feel a bit dizzy for a moment. And my chest was stuffy. I held onto the wall and took deep breaths. Why are you getting married to her? Who knows if she's clean or not? Aren't you bothered by that? Violet's tone was extremely contemptuous. And it was also full of teasing. But Damian didn't care at all and said with a laugh, who asked her to be obedient? You don't know how exciting she is in that regard. Several boys burst into laughter and teased Damian about his happy life. Violet's voice paused. And her tone revealed a hint of strangeness. I didn't expect that. She has 2 different sides. You have to be careful. I wonder where she learned that from. Damian's voice suddenly became serious. I really haven't thought about that. Could she have been like that before? Hearing this, my palms turned cold, and my fingers couldn't stop trembling. I didn't want to listen to what he said next. I turned the doorknob and stepped in. The originally lively atmosphere in the living room suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Damian, who was lying on the sofa side by side with Violet, jumped up abruptly when he saw me come in. A trace of panic flashed in his eyes. And his face turned pale. Serena, why did you come back suddenly? Didn't you say you were going to take photos with your girlfriends? Violet teased him. You're so excited to see your wife come back. What a wimp. After saying that, her narrow eyes swept over me. And a hint of triumph played on her lips. Serena, congratulations. You're finally going to marry my dog's son. I calmly changed into my slippers and gave her a faint smile. Acting like a father out of nowhere is a symptom of infertility. How about I recommend a doctor to you? The triumph on Violet's face suddenly faded, and she looked at Damian with a cold face. Does your wife have a problem with me? Damian gave her a look to shut up, glanced at me guiltily, having fulfilled my sigh, and stammered, asking me, honey, what's wrong? Why are you so angry? I sat on the sofa expressionlessly, picked up an apple, and started peeling it. Nothing. I met a vendor who overcharged me on the way. And it made me angry. Damian obviously relaxed and his face regained its color. The next second, he frowned and looked at me sternly. You can't take it out on Violet. She came here specially in advance to congratulate us. Why are you being so unreasonable? I put down the half-peeled apple, held the fruit knife in my hand, and smiled at him. Sorry. Why are you standing there? Sit down. I pointed the tip of the knife at Damian and asked him to sit down. He gave Violet, who had a wronged expression, a strange look and then sat down. For a moment, the only sound in the living room was the ticking of the clock. You were chatting so happily just now. Keep going. Hearing my words, the other friends in the living room looked at each other and stood up one after another. Sister-in-law. We have something else to do at home. So we'll be leaving now. In an instant, there were only 3 people left in the room. Violet also stood up at this moment, patted Damian on the shoulder, and laughed heartily. Dog son. I won't say much else. You're getting married next week, and I won't come to avoid making your wife unhappy. I'm leaving. See you later. After saying that, she gave me a provocative look and turned towards the door. Damian watched Violet's departing back with anxiety, turned around, and raised his voice at me. Are you out of your mind? Why do you have such a strong hostility towards Violet? I stared straight at his face, which was red with anger. This handsome face used to be the only salvation in my gloomy life. We rarely quarreled, and the few times we did were all because of Violet. Before hearing the truth of that matter today, I always thought that, apart from him having a female childhood friend who didn't know about boundaries, he was a perfect boyfriend and the person in for me. I couldn't even imagine what kind of miserable life I would be living now without him. However, today I realized that all the hardships I had suffered originated from him. In the year I just entered university, my family went bankrupt, and my father was diagnosed with gastric cancer. Our family, which was already penniless, was hit even harder, and we even had problems making a living. I didn't want to give up the opportunity to go to university, so I started working day and night. In addition to earning my own tuition fees, I also had to cover my father's medical expenses. While others were busy enjoying their campus life, I had to think about where to get the money for my meals as soon as I opened my eyes. Fortunately, I was diligent. Although life was tough, I could still manage to get by. Until one day, my roommate found a gold necklace she had lost in my closet. Facing the thing that appeared in my closet out of nowhere, I couldn't defend myself no matter how hard I tried. They all knew that I was short of money, and the look in their eyes when they looked at me instantly turned to extreme disgust. Gossip came at me like snowflakes. She always pretends to be so high and mighty every day, but it turns out she's a thief. She can even steal things. Who knows what she does outside the school every day? Maybe she's a prostitute. I saw a luxury car sending her to the school gate before. Since she's so poor that she steals, it's normal for her to be a prostitute. It's so disgusting. I confessed to her before, and she acted all high and mighty, saying she didn't have time. It turns out she was too busy serving old men. At that time, Violet, who lived in the next dormitory, passed by. She leaned leisurely against the door and reminded the other 3 girls in my dormitory, if I were you, I'd change dormitories. Losing things is a small matter if you live with her. It would be troublesome if you catch some dirty disease. I clearly remembered the expression on her face when she said that, with the corners of her mouth raised. So much so that when I saw her beside Damian later, I instinctively ran away. Damian coaxed me for a long time and explained to me for a long time. He said that Violet was just like that and spoke without thinking, and told me not to mind, although I felt uncomfortable about it. At that time I had already given myself completely to Damian. I had no choice but to accept it. Later, the 3 girls who shared the dormitory with me all moved out. The rumors spread more and more fiercely. The school cancelled my scholarship, and I also lost my tutoring job because of it. My father still urgently needed money for the operation, and in desperation, I borrowed 100 yuan in online loans. My father's life was saved, but I fell into a deeper quagmire. Facing the exponentially increasing interest, I, who couldn't afford to repay it, wanted to end it all. I stood on the rooftop of the school, and the biting cold wind howled in my ears. But my heart was completely calm. As long as I jumped off, I would never hear those harsh rumors again. I would never be threatened by debt collectors blocking me in the alley again. I had already stepped out with one leg. At that moment, Damian pushed open the door of the rooftop anxiously and appeared behind me. He stretched out his hands to me, his eyes full of pity and sincerity. "I believe you're innocent. I'll pay off your debts." At first, I was very wary of him. But he defended me in front of the whole school. Whenever someone spread rumors about me again, he would punch them without hesitation. When the debt collectors came, he drove them all away. He paid off all my debts in one go. I was afraid to live in the dormitory, so he rented a house for me outside the school. He even transferred my father to the best hospital for follow-up treatment. I trusted him more and became more and more dependent on him. I was like a hedgehog, starting to show him my soft underbelly. I thought that maybe God saw how miserable my life was. Out of mercy, God sent him to my side to save me. After graduating from university, I started working and saved all the money I earned, planning to pay Damian back before getting married. The days were getting better day by day. But my father eventually left me. He only left behind a kitten that accompanied him in his last days. I brought the kitten back to the home I shared with Damian. But the moment Damian saw it, he was stunned for a moment. Then he covered his chest and his breathing became rapid. "I'm allergic to cats. Please send it away." Looking at his uncomfortable appearance, I felt extremely guilty. On the same day, I reluctantly sent the kitten away. I never thought that this man, who had been by my side day and night and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, was full of lies and had been acting from beginning to end. It was false that he came to my rescue in my time of need. It was also false that he was allergic to cats. The only thing that puzzled me was, why did he go to so much trouble to treat me well on the one hand and deceive me on the other? Facing Damian's questioning, I lowered my head. "I don't like seeing you two being so intimate." When he heard my words, his expression suddenly relaxed, and he let out a sigh at me. "So you're jealous? She and I are childhood friends. We've known each other since we were babies. I don't even see her as a woman. I'll go call Violet back, and you can apologize to her. Then this matter will be over." After saying that, without waiting for me to nod, he picked up his coat, put it on, and rushed out the door in a hurry. I got up and went to the window, drew the curtains aside, and saw Violet standing beside the streetletoy downstairs. After Damian went downstairs, he trotted over and said something to Violet. Violet pouted her lips and clenched her fists to pound his shoulder. He took the opportunity to grab Violet's fist in his palm and pulled her closer. From my angle, it looked as if he had encircled Violet in his arms. With her hands pinned down, Violet was so angry that she lifted her foot and kicked Damian's calf. Even though I was far away, I could almost hear her giggling. The two of them lingered under the streetletoy for a while before Violet got in the car and left. Damian stood downstairs and watched her car disappear from sight before reluctantly going back upstairs. I didn't know when my eyes became moist. Icy tears slid down my face, tasting bitter. I wiped away the tears, returned to the sofa and sat down, and started scrolling through my WeChat moments. I happened to come across the latest post. It was a selfie that Violet had just posted a second ago. She had tucked Damian's head under her armpit and made a V gesture at the camera. The caption read, "The dog's son is just a dog's son. No matter how old he is, he has to let me bully him." Immediately, there were several likes below, all from Damian's group of good buddies. "Violet is so domineering. Only you dare to put your foot on Brother Song's head. Violet is awesome. She's the nemesis of Brother Song's life. Violet is so tough. She has a firm grip on Brother Song. So she's not pretending anymore and is directly provoking me. But it's a pity that I don't care anymore." I gave her a like. Damian opened the door and came in, looking relaxed and cheerful. "Violet said she won't come up. She's not angry with you, so you don't need to apologize. She's such a magnanimous person. Different from your sensitive personality. You shouldn't target her anymore in the future." I looked at him and nodded, "Okay." He came over and sat down beside me, smiling as he pulled me into his arms. "Serena, We're getting married next week. I can't believe I'm actually going to marry you. I just stared blankly ahead and didn't respond to him. He turned my face around and forced me to look into his expectant eyes. Serena. We'll go get the marriage certificate tomorrow afternoon. I'll go pick you up downstairs at your company in advance. I got up to avoid his touch and showed a reluctant expression. I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. Let's do it another day. There's no rush in just a day or two. Now, I'm just glad that I haven't gotten the marriage certificate with him yet. Thanks to the fact that every time I asked him to go get the certificate, he would always happen to receive a call from Violet. Either she was broken up with, or the water pipe at her home was broken. Even when she got her period, she would call her dog's son to cook brown sugar water for her. The tomboy who always calls herself dad can always act weak at the crucial moment. That's why the matter of us getting the marriage certificate has been postponed until a week before the wedding. Damian was unhappy when he heard that I was unavailable tomorrow, but it only lasted for half a second, and then his expression turned from gloomy to sunny. Okay then. As long as we're together, we can go get it anytime. I ignored him, took out his old phone from my bag, and handed it to him. Here you are. He was taken aback. Didn't you say that the iPhone 13 takes good photos? I don't use this old phone anymore. You can keep it. I shook my head. No need. The photos in it are all your exclusive memories. You should cherish them well. His eyes widened in surprise. And his breath caught. What exclusive memories? I didn't say anything. Using the excuse that I still had work to do, I turned around and walked towards the study. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him quickly lower his head to check the old phone. After checking it, he let out a sigh of relief. I finally confirmed that there were originally more explosive photos in that old phone. Before returning the phone to him, I deleted all the photos of him holding the kitten. He was careful to delete some photos, but overlooked the ones of himself holding the cat. I sneered, closed the door of the study, and dialed my boss's phone number. Mr. Gu, I'm sorry to bother you so late. Serena. I've seen your marriage leave application process. I'll approve it first thing tomorrow morning. Mr. Gu, I'll cancel the marriage leave application right away. I'm calling you about another matter. I previously refused the opportunity to go to the head office. I want to ask you, is it still too late to accept it now? After accepting the opportunity to go to the head office, on the way to go through the formalities, suddenly, a cat dashed out from the bushes by the roadside in the community. It walked towards me with light steps and squatted down in front of me, refusing to leave. I saw that it was clean and chubby. Not like a stray cat. Its owner should be nearby. I didn't pay much attention and just walked past it and continued moving forward. But that little cat seemed to have taken a liking to me. It also turned around and followed me. It followed me all the way to the entrance of the community and meowed a few times. I felt a pang of pity and turned to go to the supermarket to buy a box of cat food for it. After feeding it and looking at its contented expression, I stroked its little head. I'm going to work now. You can't follow me anymore. As if it understood, it turned around and walked away with light steps. Because of this little episode, I was a bit late in the morning. However, Mr. Du didn't criticize me. Instead, she asked me with a beaming smile, Serena, aren't you getting married soon? It's not easy to be apart right after the wedding. I forced a smile. Mr. Gu, work is more important. Mr. Gu is an experienced person, divorced and single. She looked at me with sharp eyes. Serena, you've been bullied, haven't you? When you refused the opportunity to go to the head office at that time, I wanted to persuade you to think more about yourself. Many times, sacrifices won't be cherished accordingly. I looked at her kind gaze and my voice caught. Thank you, Mr. Gu. I've also thought it through. Mr. Gu nodded in approval. Okay. Then get ready. You can report to the head office next Monday. Next Monday. There are still 5 days left. There's plenty of time. While I was thinking, my phone rang. It was Damian calling. Without thinking, I hung up. Before I leave, I'll try to minimize my contact with him as much as possible, but he seemed to have something extremely urgent, and he kept calling me. Finally, hadn't I felt my own sigh. When the phone rang for the 5th time, I answered it. "What is it?" On the other end of the phone, Damian's angry voice came. "Serena. I didn't expect you to be so vicious. You didn't even spare the cat." My heart suddenly clenched. This was the first time Damian had spoken to me so harshly. Even though my brain told me that I didn't care anymore. But my heart's instinct still made me feel so sour that I could hardly breathe. I took a deep breath and calmed my voice. "I don't know what you're talking about. Serena. You saw the photos in my old phone. Right? To get back at me. You poison Violet scat. Now Twan is dead. Are you satisfied?" I was taken aback. And my hand holding the phone gradually tightened. Was the little cat this morning Violet's and his cat? But I just fed it a box of cat food. How could it be dead? Just thinking about the cute little kitten that was fine this morning. Now it had become a cold corpse. And my voice trembled. "You said her cat was poisoned to death?" Damian's tone paused. Filled with deep grief. "You don't have to pretend not to know. The surveillance cameras at the entrance of the community recorded everything. You can't argue your way out of it. Violet fainted and was hospitalized because of this. You go and apologize to her. If you don't repent, then we don't need to have the wedding." After hanging up the phone, I decided to go to the hospital to confront Violet face to face. When I arrived at the door of the ward, I heard Damian's deep voice before I went in. I didn't expect that she would see those photos and find out that I'm not actually allergic to cats. I never thought that she would take her anger out on a little cat. This time, I must teach her a lesson. As for Twan, let's get another one and raise it together. At the end, his voice even choked up. I could tell that he had deep feelings for that little cat. I stood outside the door and smiled self-deprecatingly. Through the glass on the door of the hospital ward, I clearly saw that Violet's eyes were red from crying. "Damian. I'm not afraid to say it. I do like you. But ever since you got together with Serena, I've been getting along with you as a friend. You know my personality. If Serena has any issues with me, she can come at me directly. Why did she do this to a little life?" Damian interrupted her sobbing and put his arm around her shoulder. He let her forehead rest against his chest. "Stop talking. I'll make her apologize to you. It's not your fault. She's just too petty and holds a grudge because I made her send the cat away." H. The two of them were playing along and had clearly judged me. I pushed open the door of the ward and erupted the ambiguous atmosphere between them. When he saw me come in, Damian's body stiffened. But he slowly pushed Violet away. However, there was not the slightest sign of him thinking it was inappropriate on his face. He just frowned and looked at me. "You're here. Apologize to Violet." I looked into his eyes and said calmly, word by word, "Aren't you going to listen to what I have to say?" Violet grabbed his sleeve. And a pitiful expression appeared on her pale face. Damian turned his head and nodded at her. Then looked at me again. His tone cold. "If you don't apologize, then our wedding will be postponed until you apologize to Violet." I laughed. He really thought that I loved him so much that I couldn't live without him. I forced a smile and didn't respond to him. Instead, I turned my gaze to Violet. "You don't know how your cat died. I called the police for you before I came. The police will be here soon. This is the receipt for the cat food I bought from the supermarket." The surveillance footage at the entrance of the supermarket, it also recorded the whole process of me opening the can. Let the police investigate and find out the truth. As soon as I finished speaking, Violet's face turned pale instantly. Her fingertips tightly grasped Damian's clothes. And her voice trembled. "Damian. There's no need to call the police. Right? This won't be good for either her or you." I interrupted her. "Why not? Your cat is important property, and we must find out the truth. If I deliberately poison it to death, I'll voluntarily abide by the law and go to prison for 3 years." I deliberately emphasized the last sentence. When Violet heard this, she became even more anxious and her face turned even paler. A layer of fine sweat broke out on her forehead. When Damian saw Violet's weakened, anxious appearance, his brows furrowed tightly. "Serena, aren't you ashamed enough? Call now to cancel the case and then apologize to Violet. And this matter will be over." I laughed and ignored him. still staring straight at Violet. Did I poison your cat? Violet's face turned pale. And she bit her lower lip with a look of unwillingness in her eyes. I remembered. I bought avocados when I got home yesterday. 'Twan seemed to have eaten a lot this morning. Damian looked at her in shock. So, 'Twan died of poisoning from accidental ingestion? There were tears in Violet's eyes. And she nodded reluctantly. I think so. I misunderstood Serena. Damian sighed and patted her on the back to soothe her. It's not your fault. 'Twan will be happy in heaven. When you feel better, I'll accompany you to pick another one. I rolled my eyes. What a pair of scumbags. If I weren't want one, I wouldn't let them off even if I became a ghost. After calming Violet down, Damian seemed to suddenly remember that I was still standing there. He stood up, walked beside me, and tried to take my hand. I dodged. He awkwardly retracted his hand and pursed his lips. Serena. I'm sorry. I was too hasty. Let's go get the marriage certificate tomorrow. I walked past him, saw the resentful look in Violet's eyes, and sneered. Is there still a need to get married? Do your cats agree to you marrying me? Damian's face froze, and an embarrassed look appeared on his handsome face. After a moment of silence, he stammered, cats are very sensitive animals. If Twan and Yuan smell the scent of other cats on me, they will be jealous. I stared at him without blinking for a long time and then smiled sarcastically. So, hadn't fulfilled website. Is it that easy for you to pretend to be allergic to cats in front of me and lie to me? His cheeks turned red, and he turned his face away, not daring to look into my eyes. Don't think too much. I said that just because I was afraid you'd overthink it if you knew. As he spoke, his voice got softer and softer. I felt extremely bored and couldn't wait to have a showdown with him right away. But it wasn't the right time yet. I looked at him disappointedly and gave a bitter smile. Damian, you really let me down. I don't know if I should still trust you. Let's both calm down. After saying that, without giving him a chance to speak, I turned around and left the ward. The sound of his footsteps chasing after me came from behind. However, after he took 2 steps, he was stopped by Violet's voice. Damian, do you think Twan will blame me? I'm sorry for it. Damian didn't chase after me anymore. That was for the best. Guilt accumulates little by little like this. Damian came back at 10 o'clock in the evening. I was in the study, getting familiar with the work of the head office in advance. The door of the room was gently pushed open. Damian appeared at the door, looking very tired. When he saw me sitting in front of the desk wrapped in a blanket, his eyes lit up a bit. Serena, are you still angry? I ignored him and stared intently at the computer. Realizing that I was still angry, he walked into the study, sat opposite me, and looked at me pitifully. I was wrong about this matter. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? I still ignored him. His expression became flustered, and his voice even trembled. Serena, we've come this far with great difficulty. There's no need to. Just because of such a trivial matter. I stopped browsing the documents. Turned to look at him. Do you think this is a trivial matter? But now I have a trust crisis with you. Without trust, what's the point of us getting married? Coincidentally, Violet also likes you. You two being together would make everyone happy. My tone was very serious, with a hint of faint alienation. If what I said in the hospital today sounded like angry words, and my calmness now was like the tranquility after careful consideration. Damian's eyes were almost filled with despair. Serena, there's no trust crisis between us. You can trust me 100. I swear that except for this matter. I haven't deceived you about anything. Violet and I are just childhood friends. There's nothing between us. You have to believe me. I looked into his firm eyes as dark as ink and asked softly, really? He nodded without hesitation. That sincere expression was enough to convince people. If I didn't already know that it was him who made me suffer the attacks of rumors and gossip back then, and then appeared in the guise of a savior to save me, I would really be moved by him and casually forgive him for lying to me. But now, all I can see from him is complete hypocrisy. I put on a weak expression, frowned, and looked at him. I'm scared. You make me feel insecure. He anxiously took my hand. Tell me, what do I have to do for you to feel secure? I stated my request, neither too lightly nor too seriously. You transfer this house to me. And then I'll believe that you truly love me. The house we're living in now is Damian's asset, with a market value of 20 million yuan. A trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. And he stammered, "Didn't we agree to add your name to the property after getting the marriage certificate?" We had indeed agreed on that before. But that was before I knew he had deceived me. I pulled my hand out of his and smiled faintly. This is why I feel insecure. You and Violet are childhood friends. And you have 2 cats. You even lied to me for the sake of those 2 cats. Damian, if you were me, would you feel secure about this marriage? Damian's eyes dimmed a bit, and he lowered his head in silence. I didn't urge him either and remained silent as well. After a long time, he raised his head and made a decision. "Serena, I promise you. I'll transfer the house to you. Anyway, heading fossil sai. We're going to get married. And you're the wife I've chosen." I smiled at him, buried my head, and wrote a power of attorney. "Then you can go through the formalities tomorrow. I'm too busy at the company to get away." Damian looked a bit dazed and nodded blankly. I gave him another reassurance, because I've applied for a marriage leave from the company and need to finish the work at hand before the leave. Only in this way can I get married and go on a honeymoon with you with peace of mind. The hesitation on Damian's face disappeared completely. And instead, he complained, "I told you to quit that job earlier and take a position in my company. You wouldn't even have to come to work." I smiled but didn't say anything. He had proposed this when we graduated. I'm extremely grateful now that I didn't seek temporary ease back then. And give up looking for a job and go to work in his company. Otherwise, I couldn't even imagine how passive I would be now. Fortunately, having fulfilled I have a job that allows me to support myself. So that I can decisively withdraw from this relationship without considering economic factors. I'm not interested in the business of your company. I casually found an excuse to dismiss him. After Damian left the study, I looked at the date on the calendar. It had already passed midnight, and there were still 4 days until our wedding. It was also the day I would leave. I opened the mobile banking app and looked at the account that was specially opened to pay Damian back. There were 2 million yuan in it, which was all my savings over the past few years. I originally planned to pay Damian back before getting married, but now, I'm going to keep this money for myself. Damian was very efficient in handling things. 2 days later, he completed the property transfer. His voice was cheerful on the phone as he showed off his achievement to me. "Honey, can you reward me tonight? Look how fast I got things done." I leaned back in the office chair, scrolling through the moments on my computer, and replied inferiorly, "I have a dinner party at the company tonight." Damian's voice sounded unhappy. "Your boss is so inhumane. You're about to get married, and he's still squeezing you like crazy. I'll be able to take a 20-day leave in a few days. And I'll make it up to you then." Damian then regained his good mood. "Okay. I've already booked the air tickets to Bali. We'll leave right after the wedding." "Okay. Got it," I replied absentmindedly. After hanging up the phone, I happened to scroll to a moment's post that Violet had just sent. It was taken in a cat CAF. She was holding a kitten in her arms. It looked a lot like one that I saw that morning. Half of a man's body also appeared in the picture, but his face wasn't captured. The man was on the phone, and a Van Cleef Arpels bracelet was visible on his exposed wrist. That was the bracelet I gave to Damian. Violet's caption was, "We have a new little girl, her daddy said he will protect us forever." It seemed that when Damian was on the phone with me just now, he was accompanying Violet to buy a new cat. Under this moment's post, not a single one of Damian's friends liked it. It seemed that it was specifically sent for me to see. I smiled, didn't care at all, and turned off the computer. Just as I was about to get off work, a WeChat message popped up on my phone. It was from Violet. "Are you free tonight? I have something to talk to you about." Violet was sitting opposite me, holding the newly bought kitten in her arms. "I just bought it this afternoon. Isn't it cute?" I leaned against the back of the chair without even raising my eyelids. "This cat is really pitiful. Just as pitiful as Tuan and Yuan." Violet's face changed abruptly, and her tone was sinister. "It's no use that you know. No one will believe you. And Damian definitely won't either." I shrugged and said calmly, You're really pathetic. You don't even care about your conscience just to fight for a man. Violet's eyes darkened. But in an instant, her expression became triumphant. Who's really pathetic? You or me? Damian is always at my beck and call and obeys me in everything. And you don't know yet. But it was actually Damian who told me to put your roommate's gold necklace in your closet back then. After saying that, she covered her mouth and giggled. But I looked at her calmly. And she stopped laughing after a couple of chuckles. Why aren't you surprised? You knew it was him? I curled the corners of my lips. Are you telling me this now because you want to ruin my wedding with him? Violet sneered and said calmly. So what if you two get married? You're just his plaything. Do you know what he says about you in front of us? He said that you in bed. Since I'm just a plaything. Why are you in such a hurry? I interrupted her. With a cold smile on my lips. The calm expression on Violet's face was completely shattered by me. And she shrieked. He doesn't love you at all. You don't understand him at all. Yet you keep pestering him. Oh. He really doesn't love me. But he transferred the house worth 20 million yuan to me before we even got the marriage certificate. After I said this calmly. Violet's eyes wide and in surprise. What did you say? How could he transfer the house to you? I slowly picked up the coffee cup and took a sip. Then smiled at her. I also have to thank you. If it weren't for you sacrificing a cat, I wouldn't have gotten this house. You're such a kind person. Damian is really lucky to have you as a childhood friend. Violet was so angry that her lips were trembling. You slut. You're just after his money. I'm going to tell Damian and make him dump you. I tilted my head, looked at her furious expression, and laughed. If you could make him dump me, would you have kept quiet for all these years? It seems that Damian has deep feelings for me. Then I might as well tell Damian that it was you who told me what he did back then. Guess what he'll do to you? Violet's arrogance vanished instantly. But she still stared at me fiercely. I'm his childhood friend. He won't do anything to me. I stirred the coffee with a spoon and said indifferently. Then you can give it a try. I don't care anyway. I'll just get rid of a piece of trash. Only you would want to be a trash collector. Violet was so angry that she squeezed the kitten in her arms tightly. The kitten let out a shrill cry. It raised its paw and left a deep red gash on the back of her hand. You damn thing. How dare you scratch me? Violet winced in pain, grabbed the kitten's leg, and threw it away with force. The kitten was agile and landed steadily on the ground. It turned around and let out a few fierce meows at Violet. Just then, someone pushed open the door of the coffee shop, and the kitten slipped out without looking back. Seeing this scene, my suspicion in my heart was further confirmed. Previously, when Violet framed me with Tuan, I already thought that she wasn't someone who truly loved cats. She must have the behavior of abusing cats. I secretly clenched my fists and got up to leave. I didn't want to stay with her for even a minute longer. When I got home, Damian was playing games at home. When I saw him, a deep sense of disgust welled up in my heart. Before he could speak to me, I took the initiative to say, Violet's hand was scratched by a cat. You should go and check it out quickly. Damian immediately took off his headphones and stood up abruptly. Not bothering to ask me how I knew about it, he grabbed his clothes, put them on, and went out. After he left, I collapsed weakly onto the sofa. Once he was gone, I guessed he wouldn't be back tonight. I just happened to use this time to pack all my luggage. I actually didn't have many things. In the past few years, in order to save money to pay off Damian's debts, I didn't buy many things for myself. So it wasn't difficult to pack up. Once I settled down at the head office, I would find a real estate agent to sell this house and turn it into cash. In less than an hour, I finished packing. There was still a row of my clothes hanging in the wardrobe. Those were all bought for me by Damian. I didn't want to take any of them with me. After taking care of everything, I found a hotel near the airport and stayed there. I was waiting for the plane to leave the next day. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning by the time Damian accompanied Violet to deal with her wound. Seeing that Violet was okay, he was about to get up and go home. Thinking that there was only 1 day left until his wedding with Serena, his heart inexplicably skipped a beat with excitement. Recently, they had been a bit distant because of some minor conflicts. He wanted to have a good time with Serena and be affectionate with her when he got back tonight. Thinking of this, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. I'm leaving. Be careful not to get your wound wet. As soon as he stood up, Violet reached out and hooked his little finger. Don't leave, okay? Stay with me tonight. Damian turned his head and looked at Violet, who suddenly looked weak and charming. A layer of mist filled his eyes. Serena is still waiting for me at home. I have to go back and stay with her. Violet had never shown such a broken expression before. Her wet and red eyes made her look like a little rabbit. Damian's heart trembled violently. He turned his head away and pulled out his hand. Be good. I have to go and be with Serena. It took me a lot of effort to make her feel better. After saying that, he got up and walked towards the door. But after walking a few steps, Violet shouted at him with a sobbing voice, Damian, Serena doesn't love you at all. She knows that you were the one who told me to do that thing back then. Damian stopped in his tracks. And his heart suddenly contracted. He immediately turned around, took several big steps, and rushed in front of Violet. His voice was trembling. What did you say? How could she know? Violet was scared by Damian's expression and couldn't make a sound with her mouth open. Speak. How could she know? Did you tell her? Damian shook Violet's shoulders frantically. A trace of desperate fear gradually rose in his heart. He suddenly realized why Serena had told him the news of Violet's injury today. He also suddenly understood why Serena had been very resistant to his touch recently. Violet stammered in reply. When I said it, she already knew. Damian, she doesn't love you at all. She's only after your money. With a slap, a fierce slap landed on Violet's left cheek. Violet stared at the enraged Damian with a dazed look in her eyes and a look of horror. You hit me? Damian withdrew his trembling hand and stared at Violet with red eyes. If Serena leaves me, I won't let you off. After leaving a warning, Damian strode away. He drove at full speed on the empty streets in the early morning. He pressed the gas pedal to the floor, and there was only one thought in his mind. Hurry up even more. 10 minutes later, he stumbled back home. All he saw was darkness. And there wasn't a single light on. He tremblingly turned on the light switch and called out carefully to the empty living room, Serena. I'm back. Where are you? There was no response to his call. He suddenly panicked and, with his legs shaking, rushed to every room. But found nothing. Finally, having concealed me, he opened the wardrobe in the bedroom. He let out a sigh of relief. The clothes were still there. But the next second, he realized something and rummaged through the wardrobe like a madman. The clothes that were originally neatly hung up were messed up by him. He realized it. The clothes left behind were all the ones he had bought for Serena. And not a single thing belonging to Serena was left behind. I turned off my phone for the whole day. I didn't turn it back on until I was at the airport. Strange text messages flooded in like a tide, all from Damian. I had already blocked his WeChat and phone number. But he still found a way to harass me. I was too lazy to read them. They were all words of apology. If it weren't for the fact that I had been using this phone number for many years and changing it suddenly would be not conducive to the development of my work, I would definitely change my phone number as soon as possible. After going through the security check, I looked at the time. It was exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. At this time originally, having fulfilled me, I should have been sitting in the wedding car, walking hand in hand with Damian to the wedding venue. But now, I was the only one who was about to board the plane to Shanghai. There were continuous calls from unknown numbers. And I didn't answer any of them. I blocked each number that called. A week after arriving in Shanghai, I blocked at least dozens of phone numbers. Until one day after work. As soon as I walked out of the company building, a tall and slender figure blocked my way. It had only been a week since I last saw him. But Damian looked extremely haggard and had lost a lot of weight. His originally well-defined facial bones were now even more prominent. And he even had a bit of a decadent look. He looked at me with red eyes. Serena, I went to your company and only then found out that you had come to Shanghai. I looked at him in silence, ignored him, and walked around him to continue. He ran in front of me again and blocked my way. Serena, can you listen to my explanation? Things back then weren't like what you think. I became interested. Stood in front of him. And pointed to the coffee shop next to us. Let's talk there. I wanted to hear how he could defend himself regarding what happened back then. After sitting down in the coffee shop, he couldn't wait to explain to me. Do you remember that in our freshman year? In front of the library. I confessed my love to you? I was taken aback and shook my head. He forced a smile. I knew you wouldn't remember. At that time. You were so dazzling and so aloof. How could you have noticed me? But I fell in love with you from the first time I saw you. You were always in a hurry. I finally managed to stop you in front of the library and confess my love to you. But you didn't even look at me. Violet lived in the dormitory next to yours. She gave me that lousy idea. I was also out of my mind at that time. I thought that as long as I dragged you into the mud, you wouldn't be so high and mighty anymore. He wanted to continue, but I interrupted him in a cold voice. Do you think I should still be moved by your so-called deep affection? He shook his head. No. I just want you to know that I really like you. I laughed. What's your so-called love worth? Because of your so-called love. You almost ruined my life. Just thinking of the cold wind that blew across my cheeks on the rooftop back then. I felt a shiver run down my spine. If Damian had come one step later, my life might have ended at that moment. Yet he could be at ease and act like a savior. And we had been together for so many years. Damian felt extremely ashamed and could only keep saying sorry. A few tears rolled down from the corners of his eyes. And he asked me trembling, lie, Serena. But I truly love you. Although I used the wrong method. After all these years. Don't you understand my sincere feelings for you? I sneered. Your so-called true love is to talk with your brothers about my performance in bed. And to be ambiguous with your childhood friend. I don't want this kind of love. You can leave. As soon as the words fell, his face turned pale and green. And he lowered his head. That day. You heard everything. I was just showing off in front of my friends. I didn't really think that way. I said to him expressionlessly. I'm not a tool for you to show off. I know. I didn't treat you as a tool for showing off. He continued without giving up. I'll transfer all my company shares to you. As long as you're willing to come back. We can be like we used to be. I said coldly, stop dreaming. You make me sick. After saying that, I got up and left the coffee shop. After that, I could see him downstairs at the company every day after work. He tried to come up and talk to me several times. But he stopped in his tracks when he met my expression of ignoring him. After several consecutive days, he finally didn't come anymore. One afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Gu, Serena. I remember your fiancé is the general manager of Song Cheng Group, right? I quickly distanced myself from him. Mr. Gu, we've already broken up. I have no relationship with him now. That's good. I just heard some internal news. He was detained for suspected cat abuse. And a woman was detained with him. I heard that the two of them often abused cats at home. Dozens of gigabytes of video materials were found in the woman's house. I didn't expect it to be true. Mr. Gu exclaimed in surprise. You already knew about it? I smiled and said, I provided the police with the clues. I just had my suspicions and didn't have any evidence. Fortunately, heading fulfilledly. You broke up with him. Such a person with a beastly heart is really terrifying. I nodded. Deeply agreeing. What kind of good person could someone who abuses cats be? After this incident was exposed, the stock price of Song Cheng Group plummeted. Damian and Violet also faced legal punishment. However, before the sentencing, it was found out that Violet was pregnant. She was sentenced to probation because of this. And then she went to Damian's father while pregnant. She claimed that the child was Damian's and demanded an exorbitant amount of child support from Damian's family. You don't know how nervous Serena was about me. She almost cried when she saw me having an allergic reaction and being out of breath. I almost burst out laughing at my own acting. Really, Mr. Song was so angry that he fainted on the spot. Without a leader, Song Cheng Group was suppressed by its competitors and soon declared bankruptcy. It was too late for Violet to regret it now. Her belly was so big that she had to give birth to the child. Unfortunately, heading facilely. Damian's family wouldn't recognize the child even when they were wealthy. Not to mention that they were now in such a difficult situation that they couldn't even save themselves. Violet was ostracized by everyone because of the cat abuse incident and was driven out by Damian's family. She was struggling to make a living with a burden. All the people who used to call them brothers distanced themselves from the two of them. As for me, I was doing better and better at the head office and was soon promoted to project director. Now, Damian is in a stable job but with a lot of trouble. Violet is poor and has to raise a child in difficult circumstances. I am thriving. It's great. We all have our own futures. And mine is a bright one. The end.